It's the Gen Zer. Hey guys, today we're going to react to a video by Chris Williamson titled "Do Modern Women Still Want Masculine Men?" And it's an interview between him and Eric Weinstein. So without any further ado, let's get started.
Do you find that heterosexual women, respond to classical masculinity? I have to be very careful as I ask, because they certainly respond more than they're supposed to according to modern rules of femininity.
Correct.
But my guess is that it's greatly decreased from the market for masculinity in the 60s, let's say.
So look,
Before he answers that, we have to analyze how masculinity has evolved over the years. The modern day version of what's perceived to be masculine, generally throughout most Western societies, is completely different from what was typically considered to be masculine back in the 1960s, or even and that's even different from what was perceived to be masculine from the 30s. Today, a masculine man can be considered somebody who maybe might do very feminine things, or maybe he might wear feminine clothing. Let's say someone who wears skinny jeans can still be considered to be masculine in today's culture, whereas back in the 1960s, wearing clothing which maybe in a prior era might have been considered to be female clothing would probably have been looked at as effeminate. And that's just one example. Also, nowadays men in households, especially in two couple households, I'm sorry, in households with where they're in relationships and where they might be in a couple, are pretty much expected to share in the household labor in today. Men are expected to know how to cook and clean. And that's something that men of the past certainly did not attribute to their masculinity. But let's see how Chris goes on to answer that question.
again, inter and intrasexual dynamics, something I've spent an awful lot of time learning about. I'm writing a book at the moment with David Buss, evolutionary psychologist,
Okay.
on this. In the early 2010s, after the success of 50 Shades of Grey, there was a proliferation of dark romance novels, and there was a pushback from the feminism movement saying that the portrayals of men as dominant, masculine, bearded, big-chested, in a loincloth or a plaid shirt, wielding an axe, wasn't what women wanted. They wanted a softer, more...
Like the brawny guy or the Marlboro man.
Correct.
I will say, the perception of what is considered to be masculine, or what is marketed as masculine to women, has certainly changed over the years. In the past, it used to be marketed as the everyman, the superhero, the muscular Ubermensch, as probably would be described by Nietzsche, and the great German philosopher. But nowadays, it's more likely to be the TikTok pretty boy. It's more likely to be a guy who certainly not as physically imposing. He might be a tall guy, but he has great facial symmetry, but certainly not a physical specimen in terms of strength and muscularity. So it certainly changed. And just as female beauty standards have changed over the years as well. And I, I'm not sure if we can just attribute that to an evolution of taste, or as we all go through trends. Society goes through trends, through various trends, and be that relate to fashion, or as we're discussing in this case, whether that might relate to gender roles or perception of attractive gender traits. So there's a lot which goes into that.
Yeah.
They wanted a softer version of this. So they started putting more agreeable, more feminized men on the front cover of books. They didn't sell.
Right, but I wouldn't guess that either of those would be where modern women's heads would be at now.
In the space of 10 years. So I think that there's massively a difference between stated and revealed preferences.
Sure.
And it might make sense why trying to put more effeminate men on the cover of a book does not sell. it's hard to fight our biology. We can we can put on airs, we can lie, but trying to fight our biological programming, which is ingrained in us, has been ingrained in us since before we evolved to be humans. I mean, we're primates, for goodness sakes. And we've evolved to be what we currently are today over the course of millions of years. So simply because somebody wants to believe something does not mean that you're going to become that. You're not just going to erase millions of years of evolutionary biology just on a whim, just on a snap of a finger. No, your biology is going to dictate extremely and strongly dictate what your preferences are, whether you want to lie to yourself or not.
Sure.
Right. And also to caveat that, the thing that you may sexually fantasize about is not necessarily what you want to get into a relationship with. Guys will say
more.
That what you optimize for in a one-night stand and what you optimize for in a marriage partner aren't always necessarily the same
I would
thing.
think they would be wildly disparate.
Correct. Which means
I know some of you, some of you hornballs out there, you horny hornballs, as I call you guys may want to partake in all sorts of debaucherous activities with various ladies on the fans only site. Don't do that. Listen, if you guys are truly looking for an enriching relationship, that is not the way to go about it. I would say if you want to just have fun, do that. But if you're actually looking for something serious, focus on that. Because the more you focus your energy towards things which are not helping you fulfill your goal, the less results you're going to get when you're actually trying to pursue your goal. And that's with everything in life, not just what we're discussing, but it's especially important to masculinity. Be that as it may, a lot of you guys seem to have strange fetishes. And I'm not talking about you guys, the viewers, but just people in general. We tend to have a lot of strange fetishes. And well, I'm not me. Oh, wink, wink. Okay, I'm joking. Not look, people in general tend to like weird things, and those things may not be conducive to long-term healthy relationships. I mean, look at the curious case of people flying out to various Middle Eastern countries and getting sheiked on. I didn't curse you too. So, we got to treat that with the respect which it deserves.
that the front cover of the romance novel is not necessarily the partner that you want long term. They're the one that you want to fantasize about. Most of these stories are driven by sex rather than driven by love.
I heard about healthcare.gov on the radio, and with the new law, it was really
Bear with
affordable.
me,
It only
guys.
took me 30 minutes.
So I have this hypothesis, and I wonder if you have names for all sorts of things that
Before you give me it, I just need to bunch this up. Your acronym, your penchant for acronyms.
Yeah.
And a friend, Mary, says, meme first, explain later. And I think that some of my favorite episodes, they rely on aphorisms. They rely on creating memes.
Sure.
Small, quippy razors and so on and so forth. First off, because it makes it easier to remember, but secondly, because that's what gets the hooks into you.
Yeah.
This is how you make things. So if you are somebody that's listening that has an idea, that really loves that idea, give it a name. Give it a name and give it a cool name.
Yeah.
I came up with Fame Seesaw the other day, which is that on your way up, people want to support you because you remind them of their dreams. When you're at the top, they tear you down because you remind them of what they gave up on.
Yeah, yeah.
Fame Seesaw. Beautiful. And that, even if it's fucking wrong, you can't.
I have no idea how that relates to what we're talking about here, but okay.
Forget it. So
It's good.
very nice. You were saying.
That when heterosexual women realize that they have several possible life cycles and they don't have a clear sense of which one they will actually live. Am I going to get married and raise children and be at home with the children? Am I going to get married and have one child, maybe two, and be a career person? Am I never going to couple but have children? Am I going to have no children whatsoever? Am I going to do that in a coupled situation?
Yep.
Their decision trees blow out as to what it is that they're actually looking for. And one of my strong senses is that women encountered something they weren't expecting, which is that they might even be smarter than the guy at work who they're competing with, but he's happy to come in all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and work hours that are completely psychotic. And so then the idea of, well, we need work-life balance. We don't want people coming in on Friday and Saturday because that's sort of an unfair advantage that somebody who wants a healthy life is different from somebody who wants an extreme life. And so now you have this problem, which is I'm attracted to the sort of man I wouldn't want to compete with at work. If I'm going to be in the office, I want to know that I'm not going to have to deal with the guy who's willing to give up every weekend and work hours that I'm unwilling to work because that's not how I'm set at the factory. Versus, I want that guy as the go-getter while I'm pregnant and incapacitated and raising children to make sure that not only he can shepherd our family through anything because he's highly capable, but can also get me back into the workforce when I'm done raising children. And this is somewhat what I believe is responsible for the sort of incoherent messages that men and women are sending to each other, is that when we don't know what life cycle we are going to be inhabiting, our eroticism and our romance and our desire is unstable.
One of the most uncomfortable.
Eric has said a lot there. He's touched on a lot. So let me try to analyze a few of the talking points which he used. So first and foremost, he tried to reference to the idea that women generally seek more work-life balance in the workplace in comparison to men. Some have, well, there's been studies which have indicated that that may explain the uh, gender pay gap in part. Some may argue in whole, but certainly we know that it has a part to play in the gender pay gap. Now, I don't think life is a zero sum game. Simply because women choose to work doesn't mean that, hey, they can't have children, or simply because women have to have, women who want to have children and raise a family and want to be able to go on and still have fulfilling careers, that does not mean that they shouldn't be able to do both. Now, I certainly believe that in American society, we typically go about it the wrong way. We typically live in in nuclear households with two parents and our children, and we drop off our children in daycare during the day and they're not being cared for by members of our extended family who can help and assist in their education. I think that is a huge flaw. I think it would work if both parents are working. Maybe they could have the grandparents or one of the grandparents in the household helping provide for the children when they're young, and daycare can be avoided that way, and the grandparents, you can rely on them to teach them the same values which they taught you. We can pass that on to the children. Essentially, we can produce better children and great members of society tomorrow. Be that as it may, that's not a model which seems to be feasible for most Americans nowadays. The model which is feasible is, after moms have their kids, it's time for them to go back to work, and the kids have to be dropped off at daycare. And I'm not saying anything negative again, about daycare, but one, it's extremely expensive, and two, it doesn't guarantee that your child is going to be provided a great foundation. You see, the toddler years are the formation years of your children. Your children is soaking up every single information like a sponge, and having an adult there whom loves them with all of their heart and will provide for them and guide them during that, and will make sure that they're soaking up the right information and not the wrong type of information. It really provides a lot of peace of mind. um be that as it may, it's difficult, and once again, it's a difficult task, but hey, raising children is difficult. So I think if somebody wants to undertake such a huge responsibility, which is, as a woman, have children and be in the workplace, uh proper planning is going to be key. It's going to be of the utmost importance. Now, the other point which Mr. Eric, touched on, is the fact that women want a man whom they would not want to compete against in the workplace, because this is a man who's going to go above and beyond to bring home the bacon. This is a guy who's going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that he can provide for his household. If he needs to put in extra hours on Saturday, he's there. If he needs to be, put in extra hours on the weekend, he has to. He won't mind doing so. And generally, now I'm not saying all women, but generally, women tend to not be of that ilk. And generally, men tend to be the ones who put in much more extra hours. And that certainly can be attributed to certain inherent biological differences. And of course, that's not saying all women are like that or all men are like that. I know we're going to get this one bozo in our comment section saying, oh, yeah, that's not true. I know this lady, she works 40 hours during the weekend. Yeah, well, what do you have to say for that? And she works the regular hours during the week. We're not referring to her. She's clearly an outlier. And we're just relying and we're just stating what the common occurrence is, what the general rule is. So this is going to have a huge implication. And I think that's going to have an implication on whom a woman chooses to be with or chooses to see as masculine. In today's culture, masculinity means something different. And masculinity certainly tends to mean a man who's going to, well, masculinity has always meant a man who's going to provide for his family. It has always meant that no matter the era, no matter the culture, that remains unchanged. But in our current Western society, masculinity certainly might mean working extra hours over the weekend to make sure that your wife and your children are cared for, irrespective of how you may feel about it. So I completely agree with Mr. Eric's point on that.
Comfortable correlations that I've found over the last few years is that as gender inequality, pay inequality between the genders increases, relationship satisfaction for both men and women increases as well. Decreases. The more egalitarian, the more equal the pay, the less satisfied both sexes are with relationships. Men who are in relationships where the woman is the primary breadwinner are 50% more likely to use erectile dysfunction medication, where a woman is contributing more than 70% of the household income, the marriage is twice as likely to end in divorce.
Wow.
Women, for a woman to move herself the same distance on a 10-point scale in terms of attractiveness that a man can by increasing his income by $100,000, she would need a 10,000 times increase in income. In short, women are interested socioeconomically in the status of their partner in a way that men aren't. Now, the problem that you have is that women now have access to education and employment in a way that they never have done before. So they're no longer financially dependent on men.
Sure, but you're seeing something which is particularly heartbreaking in my group of females, which would be women in their mid to late 50s. I have to be honest.
Before Eric starts talking about his group of clients in their late to mid 50s, I want to address what Chris stated. Wow, this is quite a revelation in relationships where there's more parity in pay. Both genders tend to be more dissatisfied in comparison to in comparison to relationships where there's a greater disparity in the pay, where the male makes more. It's. I think it certainly has something to do with our general, uh, our general lizard brains, dare I say, as men and women. Men once again are created to provide. Men want to be providers. That's, years of, as I stated, millions of years of evolutionary biology, which is ingrained in us. And women want to be provided for. Now, that does not mean that women want to be lazy and sit around and do nothing. No. You see, when people think about what it meant to be uh, a woman in antiquity, women just, maybe they cook, they clean, and They waited for the men to bring home the bacon and they did nothing all day. Absolutely not. Trust me. Our female ancestors did a lot of work. During our hunter gatherer days, our female ancestors were the gatherers. They weren't out there hunting, but they were certainly gathering the berries, and that's probably why women have much better a much better eye for differentiating colors. Because listen, they since women were gatherers, they could tell, hey, this is lime green, this is this is a dark green. Okay, this might be poisonous. We're gonna get that. Whereas men just see green. Every shade of green is just green. So women have always had duties, and women were the ones making clothes. Women's were the one, uh, when we first started farming, women played a pivotal role in that. So women have always had duties and obligations, but it, women were never able to provide for themselves economically until now. And nowadays we're stuck in a catch 22 because we can't go back to the old days where we tell women, "Hey, you sit in the house and wait for the man to bring you the bacon." Our modern economy just can't function like that. Our GDP would essentially be halved, if not nearly cut by nearly 60% if we were to tell women, hey, they can't participate in the economy. That's not how we make progress. And women want men who make more than them. They want men who make more than them, at the very minimum equal. And if we want to have long lasting partnerships between the genders in the future moving forward, long lasting relationships, these issues have to be addressed. Issues of not just economic qualifications, but we have to look at uh, the demographic state. The current demographic state. How many women are there for the amount of men? And that's going to play a role as well. And when you couple that with economic issues, it's going to be quite a tricky road to navigate. It's not a black and white issue. It's a very difficult topic to discuss, but masculinity is always going to be judged by resources. And, you know, today, money means resources. So essentially, the men who want to have the option to select the best mate typically are going to need money. And that's just the way it boils down to. And, having women who make a lot of money, that may not be as important to these men because these men don't want to be challenged. These men want to be supported. So it's really a very tricky minefield navigate. But I want you guys to let me know in the comment sections whether you agree with me or not. If you guys disagree, please feel free to let me know as well.
Honest, I've seen some of the women I was most impressed by never coupling. And when you talk to them, there's some very uncomfortable things that get said. One of which was, I was looking for a man I could look up to, and the pool was just so small. And then, you're thinking, well, okay, it's illegal to say I'm looking for a man that I could look up to, right? Because that's not in accordance with modern feminism and egalitarianism. But on the other hand, this idea that when you're, one of the world's leading chemists or something, there's just not that many men that are going to be in that position.
Here's the issue that women usually deal with when they are successful and accomplished, and then they start to search for a mate after they're successful and accomplished. It's going to be hard for them to find a man whom they can look up to who's also seeking a woman on their level after they've reached that success. And that, I believe, there's a lot of ancient wisdom from our ancestors which we've just allowed to fall by the wayside, but that wisdom would have helped us. The elders would have probably advised those young ladies and young men to find somebody whom you love, find somebody whom you're compatible with, whom you share mutual values and mutual objectives with, and couple with them early. Doesn't mean have children with them early, but get committed to them early. So that way, when you go on to have all the success, all of the, the huge, amazing the huge and amazing accomplishments which you've always dreamed of, well, guess what? You will be able to say, hey, I've done so with my partner. Well, yeah, I don't like the word partner. I've done so with either my girlfriend or my wife or my husband or my man by my side. I've done so with them. I've done that with them, and they've been by my side since day one. And I can trust that they'll love me not because of what I've accomplished, but because of who I am. That's why it's really important to make sure that in order to truly guarantee that you can have a man in your 50s, it's probably best to try to get a man when you're most physically desirable, and also when you're just starting out in life, in your 20s, in your early 20s as an adult. That's what I think would probably be the best route. It's not feasible for everyone, but it's advisable to try to do so as soon as possible, because waiting until you're 50 to start your search for a mate, it's not a good bet. You're playing with house money at this point. But hey, you guys let me know what you think. Do you think that women still want masculine men? Is that a is that a concept which has evolved for the better or for the worse? You guys let me know down in the comment section below. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll be dropping much more reaction videos for you guys. It's the Gen Zer, and I'm out. Peace.